Good morning, good that you organize it. I think this is the best time, best way to use all of our time. To be honest, when we all are at home, and this disaster certainly needs a lot of thinking by all of us, not by just a small group of people, but all of us. Because so what I'll do in the next few minutes, and before that, good morning to all of you, and welcome to this session, and also just hoping that all of you are safe and inside your doors. And first disaster where all of us need to be inside the home, most of us, and then operate. The way I'll do it this session is that maybe for a few minutes I'll speak, then open for Q&A, and then build up all these conversations. A lot of things I'll be repeating in this session. I mean, there are some people who must have been a part of earlier sessions in the last 1 week. I've been doing a lot of these webinars, and I'm pretty sure you guys must have listened to these things. But it's important to come back to those points again and again, and tell ourselves as individuals, as institutions, uh, as a common citizen of the world, that this disaster is not at all the way we handled any other disaster in our life, whether it is personal or the tsunamis or the earthquakes or the floods or the droughts of the world. It is 100% different disaster, because this is one disaster which is still unfolding, and it is much beyond distributing dal chawal or some aid to the people. Because to me, it has also raised a huge question on the humanity, or on the trust part of it. So first, very important part, why it is different. Because this is, at least in my lifetime or lifetime of Gunj of the last 2 decades, this is the first ever disaster which is absolutely pan India. uh, Before that, when we started going 2 decades back, we always used to say that why do we need a disaster, because poverty is one of the biggest disaster. So that is one common disaster which was there in large pockets of the country or the world. But this is one disaster which is exactly have basically affected every single human being on this earth. Let's understand that in this particular disaster, there is no donor, no beneficiary in any case, because all of us are beneficiary if we are alive, and if we survive, and if we, not only we take care of ourselves, but because we take care of ourselves, we will be able to take care of other people also. This is one disaster which has actually put every single person on this earth, from the the most powerful politicians, uh, to the army generals, to the common citizen of this world, on our knee. The only difference is that the people who are powerful will come back, and the people who have been powerless will go 2 level further deep down. And and the rampant migration, the reverse migration, and the way people walked in this country is one of the biggest proof of that. And what the kind of data which we have been reading on a daily basis about the people. This is also a disaster which is still unfolding. It is not like any other disaster where, say, tsunami happens for a few seconds, or a few minutes, or earthquake happens for a few seconds, or flood happens for a few days, or a few weeks, and then you start getting into the recovery phase. Uh, right now, if you see this disaster, things are becoming more and more complicated with time. So it is still unfolding, and there is no deadline for any one of us who can really even imagine. So I'm really angry with a lot of people, to be honest, and there are almost every day there are huge debates, especially with the some people. I mean, a large number of people have really come out and understood the this particular part of disaster, but some people are still in the mode of project. How many beneficiaries will you reach? Will you be able to distribute something before 10th of April or 5th of April? Can you go to the field and make a TikTok video for us? Can we get some videos of the beneficiaries if they can thank us? Can your CEO, or in this case me and many other head of institution, can your CEO tweet us by taking our name and saying good about us? And I can, after this disaster, we can show you those hundreds of messages, because I think some jokers in the world are still not understanding the where do we stand, or and what is the future going to be. In Goon's concept note, we are actually writing that a bit about future, which most of us exactly don't know what it is. So let's understand that it's a disaster on humanity. It's a disaster which is still unfolding, and to me, which is very very painful. And I'm just raising it every time so that we understand it. It's a disaster. It's a very sad thing about the trust, or the way we have been treating our fellow citizens. And India in this context is a very, very unique example, unlike many other countries, because in India, as of now, displacement has become a much, much bigger disaster than the virus, as of now. I mean, we never imagined that large number of people will be needing cooked food immediately after this, because these millions of people never trusted us. Just immediately after the announcements, if all of us have seen those pictures, people walking, uh, here we are. I mean, we are even cribbing that how can I go to the mother dairy to buy milk because the car is not allowed. Can you imagine these millions of people that they actually walked a few hundred kilometers? More importantly, none of them trusted any of the government, from the municipality to the whatever. They didn't have any trust on any of the government. They didn't have any trust on any of the corporate or the industry or the institution. They didn't have trust on the society where they were living. They didn't have trust on the neighbor. So if my iron guy, if my press guy, who is here for the last, say, 2 decades and have been doing the beautiful ironing of clothes every morning for, say, a few hundred of us, if that person decides to leave, despite knowing that the trains are not running, the buses are not there, there is no mode of transportation, the guy does not even know how many kilometers his home is, but he knows that it takes a day or a night, even by bus or train. Just let's put ourselves in their shoes and then start imagining that what kind of trust was there, or 100% non-trust or mistrust or whatever you call it. The all negative words related to the trust. And what kind of fear was there? That's the most painful part for personally me and many of us who are really thinking deeply about this. So I've started writing. My poetry is back, and I used to write in Hindi a lot, and so I've started writing something called Covidi, which hopefully by the end of COVID thing, it will become a book of poetry. And one of the initial poetry which has come is actually कि तुम वापस ना आना, तुम गांव में ही बस जाना, दो सूखी रोटी खाना पर वापस ना आना. So it's rather yesterday I think BBC also did a lockdown ka postcard kind of thing, and it's up on BBC, but it will come in the book shape also. More importantly, the sadness around this, that those millions of people came to the cities in absolute desperation. They didn't live a good life here, never. They were not treated well, for sure. And when they went back, they again went in desperation. Now, when the industry starts, when the companies start, same people, I mean, there are some absolutely beautiful, nice organizations which have come up, and they've really taken care of every single human being who was working with them. But a large number of companies which didn't take care of their people, a large number of companies, say construction sites or the builders who didn't take care of their construction workers, they will again lure them, and the people in the villages will again be forced to come back, and that will be the worst day in the life of many of us. Absolute shame if they again come back in desperation and we start exploiting them. We start engaging contractors to make sure that we don't pay them well, we don't take care of them at all, and in a fraction of a minute or a second, they just run away. And some I was telling in another session also, one of the government officer, we were we were just talking, and the person actually used the word escape. Let's work for these people who are escaping, and that's where I was so angry with this, that why do we say that we are escaping? We are not escaping. I mean, these guys are not escaping. It's a compulsion. Who on this earth can even think that I have to walk 200 kilometers, 500 kilometers with my family, little kids on my shoulder, or a fractured foot? And then I don't even know, because 10 years back I left that village. I have no belongings there. I don't know whether that family will accept me or not. And if you study the entire thing where these people have gone back, there are many villages where, because of the precautions, and all kind of notions and safety precautions, and the way society operates, unfortunately a lot of people are not even able to touch the water bodies of the villages, just because of the social stigma and the way we have divided the people. So when I talk about the individual and the collective responsibility, I think the most important part for all of us is not just to distribute dal chawal or stand with people and for sure share what we have earned because of them. Uh, because the fact remains that we all are sitting inside our homes, we have the best possible facilities, uh, whatever we can. Our only problem is that we are not getting tomato outside, and because of the tomato, our food is not tasty. But the fact remains that someone who has grown that tomato or that onion or whatever, from that farmer to the wholesaler, to the labor involved in that, to the retail chain, to the cold storage, to the person who was coming to me and selling it outside my home, outside my house, look at them, think of them. And when they come back, they should not come back if they're not treated well. And if they come back, all of us must understand that we do not need pocha in our house on a daily basis. We do not need the jhadu in our house on a daily basis. We can actually survive with half of the utensils, because it's not about your consumption and all that kind of thing. It's about the free labor which we are getting in the shape of a maid or anyone, and the way we are treating, because they're coming from the most deprived backgrounds, and they're forced to come back to us. As individual, as institutions, as a collective responsibility, my simple thing is that let's just start behaving, thinking in a much better way. Start behaving in a much better human being. The most important aspect for us, because all other things I can talk in Q&A, what we can do right now, how can we support people, but let's also come out with these useless demeaning words like donor, beneficiary, bechara, gaon wala, unskilled, uneducated, मेहनत नहीं करते, काम नहीं करते, काम चोर हैं, all that kind of all kind of things which we have said, because the fact remains that every single entity which was discarded by the governments, by the institutions, by the individuals, have done the best possible work right now. To name a few, the government hospitals, large number of private doctors who really made a huge amount of money are not taking that kind of risk which the average last mile person or the most ignored government hospital or dispensary guy is taking as of now. The nurses, the government school buildings, which are becoming shelters for so many people. The entire development sector or the social sector, the way it has been discarded, it has been attacked in the last so many years. And still some people are doing that, because these are the people who are sitting inside their homes and they don't know what is happening outside. They're only believing on that fake media, and then they make their make their statements or comments. I'm so proud of being a part of this particular sector, the social sector, and which this ILSS is doing also, that you're trying to bring more people to this sector. I'm so proud of these last mile people, to be honest, who do not have any kind of protection, who are filling up the gaps of the government or of the agency, or because of the urgency and the volume of the work. Most of them have never handled any health emergency. This kind of emergency, in any case, the topmost people on the earth have not handled. So who are these people? These are just some emotional fools, some passionate people who really want to do something for the next door. They are taking precautions, but they are also risking life. And that is what makes me so angry when someone sitting inside the room want to give some 10-15 lakh rupees and demands a TikTok video, from the field, because that person is not understanding. That person does not have courage to move out and do it. There are provisions of taking permissions, and there are provisions of taking care of yourself as per the health requirements and all that, and the safety precautions. And a large number of country people have really come out. When I say, at least they're reaching out to the next door people, and they're making sure that people don't die of hunger. So in nutshell, and then I'll stop and maybe get into the Q&A all. I think this is one disaster which has actually told us that it's extremely important to spend more money on the health, much more money on the health. Privatization is not at all a solution. Let's understand this, because the most privatized country, the Western world, has collapsed like anything. They couldn't deliver the health systems. They couldn't deliver anything. Fortunately, I mean, imagine the Air India. I'm so proud of Air India sitting here, because all of us have been discarding that airlines because of whatever reasons, I don't know. But every single place where the risk has been taken, it is the Air India pilot and the staff and the airlines. So all these institutions, all these individuals which are otherwise discarded by the society or are questioned by the society because of the huge privatization and the business interest everywhere, it's extremely important to value them, look at the life in a totally different way. The fact remains that hundreds and thousands of people who were on the roads, millions of people who were on the road, most of them or many of them were gainfully employed till last date or till a day before that. And just because the employers never reached out to them, many employers are now going back to the borders and distributing food instead of making sure that there was a chance that these people don't live. I mean, we are a small institution, but we are still about 1,000+ people as Gunj. And one thing which I can say with confidence and with respect to the fellow citizens and my team, that most of them come from exactly that background. The people who were walking, most of them were employed in the same way, the way millions of people were employed. But I can tell you that not even a single person was a part of that walking brigade. They were not forced to move out, because we reached out to every single person just to tell them that your food is secured. Don't worry about it. We opened office by taking permissions. We were never prepared for such huge online transfers and all that, but we made sure that every single person has enough money twice in the month of March. And we are not a rich organization. We depend on people. We don't make money. We don't get loans from the governments or the banks to fudge at all. We do it on our own with the support of a lot of beautiful human beings and institutions. Many of you are listening in that group today. But it's just that we reached out to everyone. We made their WhatsApp groups to have interaction, to take care of their concerns. And we came back as a family. At least none of my team member or even the partner organization with whom we are trying to work, hundreds of these partners all across the country, at least they have certain kind of sense of security that even if it goes long, which it will, at least in our network, people will not die of hunger, or people will not be forced to walk on the road to the unknown territory. They don't even know how many kilometers and all that. I'll stop it here. Just wanted to briefly, I think, put the different angles around this disaster. We can come back on facts and figures in the next 30-40 minutes and how we are doing and all that. But let me start taking the question. Over to you, Nikita.
Yeah. So Thanks for that, Anshu. I think, so I'm beginning to see some questions, and I think the first couple of questions we can take together in thinking of the short and long-term implications of COVID, particularly when we think about the challenges for people who are, who've gone back or are looking to get back to their native places, what that might look like for them. And are our villages geared for sustainable livelihoods if they decide to stay there, if it makes sense for them to stay there? What do we see changing?
So this is what, if you know, in some of you who have been a part of these sessions, you know it very well that this is what we have been telling again and again, that India has absolutely grossly ignored the villages of India, and also that way the slums also, because whenever we say that slums are the extension of the cities, that's a wrong notion. Slums always have been the extension of the villages, because people like me and you never go to the slum and stay. So that's an absolutely wrong notion, wrong narrative. And this particular exodus has been a proof of that, that slums are actually the extension of the villages. That's where people have gone back. No one has migrated from the village to city in this disaster. Every single person who has migrated is actually the person who is migrating from city to the village, because it has been the extension of the village. And why did it happen? Because we ignored the villages. We ignored the very low cost maintenance of life in the village. And there are a lot of economists who came back with these wrong theories, that if you want to solve the problem of the rural India or rural population, bring them to the cities. And my question to many of them in all these sessions has always been that, have we been able to solve the problem of the people who are already there in the cities? This disaster, now I think these guys, these economists and so many other people need to learn from this particular disaster. And most of us who are listening and otherwise, we need to spend more and more time, money, energy in the villages of India. As of now, that is the most distressed section of the society. In any case, if we pick up the last data of the last couple of decades, and we found couple of lakh people, couple of 100,000 people committing suicide. None of them committed suicide in the city, but because of distress in the village. So because there is distress. Also, the notion that people don't die of hunger in the villages because they have lot, absolutely wrong notion. The migration is actually happening, earlier migration, not this one. I'm not talking about the reverse migration. That is actually happening because of the compulsion of it. So there is a push factor from the village, which has forced people to migrate to the cities. There's no pull factor. Cities, which slum of India can actually attract an average villager? Tell me. And ultimately they end up standing here. I mean, I'm living here. So I'm giving you this background so that we start thinking in a different direction. Let us put more and more time, money, energy in the villages of India. As of now, it's a big issue because villages have less resources and much more people now. A state like Uttarakhand, which has hardly seen reverse migration in the last many years, even that state has seen the kind of reverse migration. If we work in the villages, if we try to respect agriculture, if we try to respect the farmers, not only the food, which otherwise we all do, we start respecting the farmer, we start understanding that this country needs lot of work on water in the villages, so that the agriculture water, so that the agriculture starts happening and the employment happens. If we are able to spend some energy in the villages, whole lot of us, what will happen, I can tell you. The moment you put in a lot of efforts and resources there, a lot of new employments will happen there apart from agriculture, because the fact remains that 70% population stay there and 70% consumers also stay there. So if the villages start making products for the villages, the economy will survive. And this is what we have been saying, that this is very unfortunate that villages of India have always produced for the cities. The same people because of whom we are eating the sambar rice here, or the dal rice, or all kind of biryanis sitting in the cities. The same people who gave us rice are starving for rice right now. Let's understand this entire cycle. The moment this starts happening, only so the forced migration will stop. Only the migration by choice will happen, which is absolutely the right way of running a country or running a society. I mean, people who have their aspirations, people who have their skills must come back. That's the whole cycle if we work on.
Right. There are also questions, Anshu, around, now that the reverse migration cycle has started and, the summer is upon us, monsoon is coming soon. Do you see this crisis worsening for the communities before anything starts to get better?
In a really, really major way, because summers and drought and heat has always been a big issue, and this is unfortunately followed by the rains. So this is how, because Goonj has been working in these disasters for more than 2 decades now, and we understand this pattern. And look at the weather. First is the extreme heat, and especially for the homeless people, the heat is also an issue, and especially with lack of water and all that. Then the rains, which is flood or the drought kind of thing, and because of the rains, as we all know, the eastern part and many other parts, suffer due to say floods and cyclones, followed by the winters. So in the life of homeless people, in the life of especially the migrated communities who have gone back to the villages with not say proper base, because these people migrated back to the cities to not only to support themselves but to support the families also back in the villages. That entire cycle is broken. So this year and onward is actually going to be extremely complicated for the people, because the need is much more for sure, and the income is much lesser. And that is why I'm again and again stressing that yes, it is good that we are feeding people. That's extremely important, but let's not stop there. Feeding people in the cities or the people who are walking or who were walking is an extremely important step. But all of us really need to come out of a bit of comfort zone. Let's start giving as much as possible to whosoever, through whomsoever, but let's target the people who have already gone to the villages much more, because out there survival will become a big issue.
Right. And so you're saying that giving, yes, but if you had to outline, in addition to supporting organizations that have that last mile connectivity and, initiatives to help that population, if you had to outline 3 key things that we as people can do to support those efforts, what would those be?
So one is that make sure that you reach out to 10-20 people absolutely on an individual basis. I mean, not only to your maid, but to the family of your maid. So the way some of us are doing personally, and many people in this forum are also doing, we are actually telling people that, from the villages where people have come and all that, any kind of distress, tell us. And to be honest, this is a time when people just need cash. Either people need cash or people need ration. This is the first phase right now. And second important part is that many of the people in this particular forum and the society are are holding very responsible and key positions in building up teams and bringing people. And there are a lot of corporates also who are in touch with us, and they want people back. So they've been talking to us that can we really do this and all that, and they're again coming with the CSR angle. And our whole debate is that what is that which you have done, which you did which you did wrong, say last time, but you will not do now. How are you going to improve the way you will employ people? That is the most important part. So many of us, when you are talking about 3 things, is that we really relook into things and make more fellow citizen family framework in our work process, whether it is home or it is our offices and work. Some of my answers will not fit the way a lot of people are thinking, but I am again and again saying that it is not limited to reaching out the aid. It is one of the golden opportunity for us to relook at the society, relook at the humanity, respect the fellow citizens. And each part of our life, we will have to take that. Right from my maid and my driver to my peon to my contractual staff, uh, to my fellow support systems and shop floor people and all these nonsense of blue collar and white collar and no collar. How do we really come out of this? So in nutshell, yes, do stand with the institutions, especially the last mile organizations, who are supporting, who are standing with the people, and they need a long term support. Do not force people or institution to finish off some activity right now, because not only the right now activities are important, these activities are important in a sustained way. I don't know for how many months and years now. So let's have patience the way we all have patience in our life. Let's have patience for the people also who are working in this field, and also reach out to at least 10-20 people in your network, which many of us are already doing, but more so.
Right. And I think, Anju, something that you were saying earlier, and also reiterated in this answer, we're all responding to the crisis in ways of, food distribution or giving cash. But truly, a lot of this is about trust building much before any crisis hits us. How do we create communities that respect all its participants, all its members, and uh, everybody can trust each other to take care of them? So,
And
yes.
we are already going through a very tough phase of talking about Hindu, Muslim, and caste and community in this country, which is one of the most unfortunate thing which is happening. I know there was a call yesterday with some people of an institution, and one of the question which came up in that call was that some of our employees are in Delhi, some of our employees are Bombay. So can you really make sure that the money which is given by Delhi employees is used in Delhi? My response to that was that now listen to me for 2 minutes and I'll be upfront, and I'll be angry. Then I asked that person, I said that, listen, there was your employee was born in Bihar. He went to IIT Kharagpur, which is West Bengal. After that he went to IIM Ahmedabad, which is Gujarat. After that he worked in some other state, then came to Delhi. After COVID you will transfer him anywhere. Which state he belongs to, which community, which caste he belongs to, which religion he belongs to? He belongs to this country. And that person is not saying that where do you I want to put my money. It is the opinion leader who are fixing up these solutions, without understanding that this is one disaster which is pan India, which has affected every single community, every single person, the richest to the financially weakest person. So that is what I'm saying, that it's extremely important that we relook into the way we are operating, right? We start questioning the way the caste community related issues or the religion related issues are coming up, even in the spread of this virus in India and in many other countries. We start questioning the media now. How long these guys will really create such kind of nuisance? How long will they serve us, negative things? No one is controlling them. No one is putting controls on them. No one is asking these. I come from this fraternity of journalists, fine, because that's what I studied. And in some cases, I'm absolutely ashamed of many of my fellow media guys. Can we really question them now? So if we have to relook at the society, we really have to relook in a totally different way. That is where we will be able to build the trust.
Yeah. So, in fact, I see a related question to this, which is questioning the media and questioning people around us is one thing, but we as the social sector, what do you think are things we can do in the direction of changing mindsets? Because there's a lot of direct intervention, programmatic support for various causes, but mindset change is still something that's a big challenge. So how can the sector respond to that call?
So one is that we stop talking about our own individuals and our individual efforts and our own institution effort. I think this is also a very good chance for the sector to integrate and for the sector to really have a collective voice and learn from each other. I mean, that's what many of us are trying to do, and also somewhere take risk of losing some supporters. because it's extremely important to correct that language and narrative of the person who is giving you money or material or support. Just for the sake of it, that, if that person does not give money, 10 people will not get food today. We do many times the larger harm because we put a stamp on the wrong narrative just by accepting, something, whether it is money, material, or any kind of support. I think that is where the sector can do a lot. Sector can also bring a lot of stories of positivity, of the courage, or the way people are doing. I mean, we should not sell the pictures of just the distress. Uh, that these people are dying, these people are do this, give money, otherwise they will not survive, and all that. I mean, the kind of, especially the graphics which we use apart from the language, uh, many of us need to learn that let's start speaking a different language. There is no one supporting no one. All of us need to do it together. Someone will put in money, someone will put in effort, someone will risk life, someone will distribute, whatever. Uh, so I think that is where the corporate sector, the social sector can really come up. Again, repeating a much larger picture, not limited to our own institutions. Correct the narrative and the thought process of the people who are involved, because large number of people are not exposed to the realities. Large number of people do not know what is happening, and also start sharing as much possible the story of the courage and the way people are handling it all across the country. I think some immediate thing. And there are questions on the Goonj strategy and what we're doing.
Yes.
I can just tell you in brief. So in the last, some of you know how we operate. So in the last 2 decades of our work, we have been able to create a huge grid, or you can say lay the pipelines across the country. So we operate in 25 states and union territories as of now, parts of those, with a team of 1,000+ people. And our hardcore role has been using the urban surplus material as an additional resource for the rural India. So we are not in the business of distributing or collecting, just collecting clothes, utensil and all, but we use it as a parallel or additional currency for the village development. So we are one of the largest village development institution which works on water, sanitation, infrastructure. So when people make a road, they are rewarded in kind. That's the whole model. I'll not go into details of it. Why I narrated this, that while doing this, what has happened is that there is a huge network of the community-based organization, of the local NGOs, panchayats, social activists, social leaders, to the urban people who have been supplying this material, from the retail chains for the dead stocks and all, or running campaigns to schools, colleges, corporates, and individuals who give this material. And then there is third piece, which is the most important piece, is the logistics around that how to handle material, pack material, send material, last mile logistics. So a proper grid, or the pipelines are already there. And that is the reason that in the last just few days itself, we have been able to activate our work already in about 14 states as of now, and more every day we are adding more. There are a couple of things. One, for sure, we are supporting the local food, right from getting the packed food and distributing it through our partners and ourselves, to even cooking or supporting a lot of kitchens, to making ration kit and soap, sanitary pad and all, and reaching out as many people as possible. That's for sure, it is happening. But parallel, we have also opened up the same stuff in the villages through our partner organization. We have already activated about 40 partners in few states because this disaster needs to be tackled locally with the less and less human touch and less burden of the logistics. So as of now, we are just reaching the essentials to as many families as we can. If you see our poster on our Facebook and all, you can imagine that that poster also shows people walking. So we could anticipate that this is what is going to happen, but none of us, to be honest, anticipated that it will happen like this, in this volume and in this particular way. So it became a bit overwhelming for all of us, to be honest, but now it's in control. And it is a sustained effort. So 3 things we'll do. One, we will reach out to lakhs of people, lakhs of families with these kits of essential. food, toiletries, sanitary pads, and many other items. In the villages, we are also adding tarpaulins and the mosquito nets because there is this additional population which has gone there. We are also trying to add, when the stores are opening and the supplies are opening, the cooking utensils. I'm giving you a simple tip that anyone who is working on the dry ration right now, if you just add maybe a couple of cooking pan, just one cooking pan and a few utensils to eat, you will see hundreds of migrant communities sitting in a corner somewhere and arranging some local patta to wood to whatever the paper and cooking their own food instead of just serving, because now as the heat is growing, as the temperature is growing, serving cooked food will become a bit of issue, because it will spoil soon. So these are the long-term model, and then we also run an initiative called WAPSI, post disasters, which is basically the employment generation activity within the village. We will run that as and when the areas start opening up that way. The third thing which we are adding this year, this time in our disaster work, that we will also map the skills of people, and if there are good organizations, ethical organizations who have certain kind of need, from these institutions, of these people from the villages, we will certainly look into that. But yes, we will only work with the ethical organization who commit a decent stuff to the people who will come back, because there will be enough people in the villages who have already spent a lot of their valuable time and resources in the cities and have lived a very miserable life in the initial phase, to come up to a level where they learned some computer skills, accounting skills, and so many other skills, management skills and all. I am pretty sure that sooner or later these guys would like to come back, and the industry also in the country needs us absolutely badly. So we'll see in our little capacities what kind of matching we can do, but in the process we will also come out with our ways of operating, so that if anyone wants to copy, learn, add, will be free. I think this is largely we are doing.
Right. The next thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, Anshu, was the government in this whole picture. We're definitely staring at problems in education, healthcare, livelihoods, all of that. And of course, now that more and more people are going back, our systems don't function in the best of circumstances. So in the given situation, it's of course going to only worsen, and for probably a prolonged period. So what do you see as opportunities in both collaboration and also in holding the government accountable at a time like this?
For sure. I think the larger role certainly needs to be played by the government, because none of us can even do a little bit what the governments are capable of doing it. And some of these state governments have shown a very good leadership even in handling this particular disaster. We all are following those state governments and the kind of things and the initiatives these guys have really taken, and that's very commendable. And some of them have also done it well because they have respected the people who know the field. So I mean, there are governments who have been very respectful even to the social sector and social sector leader, and the business sector and the business sector leader. So if the governments give respect to the institutions, I'm again coming back to the development sector for sure, because these are the last mile people, and they, even if you have to deliver health, or if you have to deliver education in the larger part of the country, these 600,000 villages, the most effective person is the last mile NGO worker or the ASHA worker, because these are the people who have the most beautiful personal connect with the communities that way. So we need to supplement each other's role. But again, I'm coming back to the trust factor, that the citizens need to trust the government, at least the governments who are doing good and who are making citizens a part of some of these decisions. And the government certainly need to trust the citizen sector and the people who have done something in life much more, instead of just keep questioning on the intentions and all that. I mean, I'm being very blunt on this, but I think this is the only way, because no civil society, no group of people, no government No hospitals, no corporate, no industry alone can handle even a part of this disaster. Nowhere in the world they have been able to do, and India is a huge country, and even in the normal peacetime, a large number of systems do not work in a proper way. So in a disaster where the systems are collapsed and disaster is unfolding, uh, obviously is complicated. So let's put in our skills as much as possible in the entire process.
Right. Anshu, I was also wondering, there are people within this larger pool of people who are more vulnerable. We are definitely hearing about, women being more affected by domestic violence at this point in time. Children are more vulnerable. Many people, of course, by virtue of their religion or, in geography such as the Northeast, which again is never part of our usual conversation. So in your model or, in the larger work that you're seeing happening, what do you see as ways to, be more supportive of these vulnerable groups?
So as of now, it's a complicated situation because many of us were staying in a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom houses, right? When we are locked down and we still have problems. But imagine the families of 4 to 6 or 7 who are really confined to a 6 by 8 or 80 square feet or something or smaller than those units with the common toilets, and especially in a condition where the where the liquor is not available for all these largely the men who in any case used to assault their families, and now there are these further reasons for that. And we have been noticing this, and I think there are now articles also that the domestic violence is growing and will grow further, and then the economic distress will make it further worse. So that is the scenario we all need to understand. I am pretty sure that the counseling and the mental health issues will be a very large issue now. Many of us who are good in this, many of us to whom people listen, even if we do not have the proper skills of counseling people. I'm saying, but if there are 10 people who listen to me and who gets a positive vibe or energy from me or any one of us, I think we have a much larger role to play now. Let's reach out to people, and in this particular phase of lockdown and later, I think pick up a phone again, and these are very small practical things many of us might not value, but when a person gets a call from say suppose my mate gets a call from me and just asking her that how are you, are you getting enough food, whether I'm able to provide food or not, I don't know, but at least that person understand that there is someone. So you will be able to reduce the trauma of the mental health and all to a little extent. Plus, if a call goes to a lady team member or employee of our team, I also see as an additional strength with that person, even when the domestic violence or something happens. But let's be ready. Let's be ready for the consequences of the disaster in a much bigger and bitter way. And that's why I'm saying that we are doing this in our team and all, that we are also trying to map the strength of a lot of us. Maybe I only know the strength of designing of my team member because I never knew that that person can also really do a good music session or a talking session with 50 people. So can we also, spend time in taking out our inherent strength, which we never used, and use it for this particular crisis? And some of my answers, Nikita, are, to be honest, going back to the individual and collective responsibility, and
Right.
looking at our own strength and weaknesses, and then doing it in a bigger way. And all of us, the so-called privileged people, can do a lot with our money, with our whatever little skills, with our good feelings, and all. I mean, that's how we'll be able to handle it,
Right.
because we can't just say that suddenly all these people will have the support of the administration. People who are suffering by the domestic violence will suddenly get administration because administration is already 24/7 operating, or all of them will have access to the doctors or the mental health experts. No, it will not happen. It is
Right.
practically impossible. So I think many of us need to do, not as expert but as a fellow citizen, and play that role.
Yeah. And in fact, I was going to come to something else, but on this note, I also want to ask you, we've been talking about this new normal or something about this crisis is going to fundamentally change the way we live. Do you think, what do you think about that? Do you think more and more people are going to, maybe come out of how they've approached life so far, maybe, look at development as something that they want to contribute to coming to the social sector? Do you really see things changing, or do you feel more cynical about people going back to old ways?
I am I'm not cynical, but if I see the history and I say that the largest and the biggest disasters which have happened in the world, whether these are the world wars or these are the, say, that Union Carbide thing in Bhopal, and many of these conflicts across the globe, and how we have finished Iraq, and many other things. I mean, I don't even need to name these. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what have we learned. What has the society really learned from them? I mean, the fact remains that even today, most of the countries have the much larger budgets for saving, one country from another. I mean, two countries are actually buying more weapons from each other than talking about the healthcare or the education and all that. So I don't know. I mean, how long the business greed or the greed of the money will dominate this world. So far, if I see very large disasters in the world, whether they've been able to make a huge dent on the humans and the way people think and behave, to be honest, to me, it's a question. Because otherwise there were enough disasters in terms of environment and chemicals and the way we have been living, that most of us would have changed the way we are operating, but we are not, because we feel the human being are the people who try to adapt and adjust in any situation. And I think most of us are still thinking that we are immune, and there is someone else who is affected by a disaster. And one of the biggest example I'll give you is, which I often give, that on a lot of highways, we have often seen the fatal accidents, and we see someone dead. For, say, about half an hour, we drive slowly. Then we stop, we wash our face, we take a cup of tea somewhere at the dhaba, and then we again get into the speed of 120 kilometers per hour. If we go to the history of us, this is scary. And it says that we don't learn much, but if we take it as a turning point in the history and a point that, the God has given us a chance to redo our life, whole lot of us can really change. And the day needs to come where you do not need a so-called charity or development sector, where every single individual start behaving in a much better way. In terms of sector and all, for sure, the time has come when a large number of people must take a plunge, must take a chance to get into this humanity or the social development sector, because this is the time. This is a time when a large number of people will get affected, and there will be a huge need of the people who work on education, sanitation, all kind of development issues across the globe. So it's just coming as an opportunity for the people who always were, as I always say, jo hashiye pe baithe the, who were sitting on the fence. At least for those people, this is the best chance to jump into this. It will not be so comfortable, for sure, in the time to come, because one of the sector which will affect in a huge way in terms of money is going to be the social sector. No one is talking about that sector, which is actually employing millions and millions of people in this country and the world, because social sector that way by nature does not generate its own money.
Right.
It depends on the money from the other people, and if other people are not making money, and if other people are not willing to part away with their money because they feel insecure, then the social sector will go through a very tough financial phase. But I'm pretty sure that we all are used to going through tough phases and come back to it, because I think we are born for this now. So
Anshu, that's true, but I do think that there's a lot of insecurity. In fact, when we were speaking over the phone the other day, you did mention how a lot of the funding being repurposed is definitely putting many organizations at risk. And uh, any quick advice for all the social sector leaders that are on the webinar with us right now?
no, I think it's just important to go deeper, as deep as possible, and many of us really need to change our priorities also, and the way we are operating, for sure. And let's also start treating the people with the money as equals, I would say. I mean, this is not the time when we really massage ego of each other. I talk a lot about my work and I listen a lot about money from someone. I think it's high time that the people, whether social, government, and corporate, again start thinking that uh, I think all of us are on our knees, and we need to work together, and we need to supplement each other. So someone can put in money, someone can put in effort. Someone can sit in the city and make decisions. Someone will go to the village and deliver it. But yes, for sure, the social sector also, the way all other sector have to redefine, revisit their purposes, I think we also need to do that. And for sure, for many of us right now, the biggest crisis, which all of us need to do, and this is what I've been basically talking to many social sector, these kind of webinars and all. I'm telling them that all the issues are important. So every single issue which we love is extremely important and will have more importance. But now, for all of us, whether we work on disability or we work with sex workers or we work, on mental health or disaster, for all of us, the immediate priority is that our communities should live. They need to be alive, and they don't get into the trap of the or the vicious cycle of the debts from the sahukars or the local market. So how do we really repurpose our work for the time being, and then rebuild as it unfolds further?
Right. And what would be your message for corporate leadership and donors, maybe?
I think it's extremely important for all of them, and many of them are really very beautiful people. The way they've reached out to us and many other places, I think it's extremely important to change the word. It's not at all a number game. It cannot be solved in a project way. Uh, uh, None of us can really give you exact deliverables or the communities to serve. Uh, yes, there are certain things. The way most of the corporate leaders are not even able to project their corporate work or their profits or their business growth and all that sitting today. They should not expect such kind of facts and figures from the social sector also. Because if you as a business leader cannot predict, cannot imagine, cannot plan anything for your own business where you are, and thousands of people are there, how do you imagine, say, me to really give you answer of everything? uh, because it's just unfolding. And this is the time when the corporate sector for sure needs to behave in a much more responsible way for the people who ran away, for sure. uh, Not because they wanted to run away or not because they were escaping, but because the corporate sector, the business sector, and many of us uh, could not or build any trust, or we absolutely failed in maintaining a trust or the dignity of people. So this is a time for every single corporate leader also to relook at the way we, again and again saying the same thing, the way we behave with people, the way we treat people, the way we pay people, the way we take care of their social securities. I think all of us need to really relook into that, whatever leader we are.
Perfect. So on that note, Anshu, any parting thoughts? A lot of our participants also want to know if, in addition to monetary donations, they can support Goonj in any way right now.
Cool. So for sure, I mean there are on Facebook and web. Someone was asking how to give money and all also. So there are links on the website and Facebook and all, and the Facebook is also regularly updated, Twitter and all. So you have those links. and a little bit of detail of the work. We don't put a lot of things on a daily basis because this is a time to work, and then we will come back with the comprehensive reports the way we do in other disasters. More importantly, keep telling us the desperate need anywhere, and make sure that you take care of whatever you can, and then reach out to us. If you have any kind of creative skills, if there are people, there are companies who can build the campaigns on awareness and many things, reach out to us for sure. Any connect with the wholesalers of any item, because we are not limiting our life or our work to the food grains and soaps and sanitary pads, but now that the families have to rebuild their life, millions of these families have to rebuild their life, they actually need everything. So anyone who has that inventory in the country, anyone of anything, right from utensil, footwear to anything and everything, because Goonj handles that. Reach out to us. Connect with people. Let us know if we could be, as an institution which has gained experience in dealing disasters in the last 2 decades, if we can stand with anyone who is trying to do this work in terms of talking to supporting to standing together, whatever. And my again humble advice is that Goonj is just one small tiny institution. We are trying to do whatever little we can. I'm making literally a case for the hundreds and thousands of institutions and individuals in the sector and beyond. Stand with them, whosoever you love. I mean, it's not that all of you need to just give it to Goonj, as Goonj can only do this much, and we are doing. Fortunately, we have a larger pool of the institution. That's why the reach is really much more. But please feel free to reach out to anyone and just do it. Just do it. Just do all your skills. Think, and my last point is that think very creative and very good about yourself. Do a proper SWOT analysis of yourself, and for a day just do the strength part, not the weakness and threat part, but just understand the S and O, the strength and the opportunity part. Opportunity are immense as of now, even sitting at home. Just map your strength and see that what can you deliver to whom. And I'm telling you one thing again, a lot of people are reaching out to us again and again, the new startups and all. And half of them we are not able to even listen and talk, because this entire thought process that every single problem, social issue can be solved by making an app is such farce, is such a fake thing. Technology is extremely important. We are making use of it. We need people who can really work with us in terms of technology and tell us how to do things better. But let's understand that by creating roti.com, we don't make roti. So app is not a solution for everything. There is a sense of urgency. There is a sense of volume. Because the problem is in volume, we need solutions and different kind of solutions in volume, but we also need people who work on these solutions in volume. So all of us can really do a lot, and this is a beautiful time in our life. To be honest, toughest and all is a part which we've been discussing, but this is also a very beautiful time in our life that we are so privileged that sitting even inside the home, eating 2-3 meals a day, we can still think for the people and do for the people in a really big way. Because we've been very privileged, the God has really blessed most of us who can even afford an hour to get into this conversation.
Absolutely, Anshu. So we're well past our time together. We'll close the session. But the last time you came to the ILSS program, somebody said that what Anshu does best is hold a mirror to us, to think about how we live our lives and treat the people around us. So thank you so much for being that mirror today. I think there's a lot for all of us to think about. And there are a lot of people who are keen to help Goonj. So we'll have them email you, a lot of our alumni and other attendees. But thank you so very much. We're grateful for your time. And to everybody else, we will be sharing the email, the Goonj email that you can reach out on if you want to connect with Anshu and his team. We'll also send you a feedback form. Do fill it up for us. It helps us know how to make these sessions more meaningful for you. And we have a lot of exciting sessions coming up in this series. So do look out for further information on our website and social media channels. Thank you so very much for joining us. Have a very good day.